Daniel had lived his whole life in the quiet rural town of Greenfield, a place where the morning breeze smelled of fresh hay and distant rain. The town was small, peaceful, and slow, and most people knew each other by name. Daniel's days usually started before sunrise. He would pull on his old boots, brush the dust off his hat, and walk out to the family ranch where the horses waited patiently for their morning feed. He wasn't the loud or showy type. Instead, he carried himself with a calm kindness that made people feel comfortable around him. But although he had a simple and steady life, something inside him always felt a little empty, as if he was waiting for something he didn't know how to describe. Every day looked the same, gentle, predictable, and quiet. He didn't complain, but he sometimes wished for a moment that would change his routine, something meaningful that would make his life feel a little warmer. That moment arrived on an afternoon he never expected. The annual cultural fair had come to the town, a small celebration with music, homemade food, and colorful stalls. It wasn't anything grand, but the whole town took part, and families from nearby places visited too. Daniel wasn't planning to attend for long. He had only stopped by to help set up a horse riding booth for children. After finishing his work, he wiped sweat from his forehead and looked around, thinking he might walk through the fair for a few minutes before heading home. As he was turning toward the exit, someone bumped into him lightly. He heard a soft gasp and turned to see a young woman, holding a notebook that had slipped from her hands and fallen to the ground. She looked flustered, as if the small accident had surprised her more than it should have. Daniel bent down quickly and picked up the notebook for her. "Here you go," he said with a gentle smile. The girl looked up at him, and for a moment, Daniel felt something in his chest shift, just a slight, unfamiliar flutter. She had soft eyes and a shy expression, and her cheeks were slightly pink from embarrassment. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "It's all right," Daniel replied. "Happens to all of us." She gave a small smile, still looking a little nervous. Daniel noticed she wasn't from the town. Her clothes, the way she carried herself, and even her notebook all looked different from what the locals usually had. "You're new around here?" he asked politely. She nodded lightly. "Yes. I'm Ayla. I'm staying with my relatives for the summer." The name suited her, soft, simple, and beautiful in a quiet way. "I'm Daniel," he said, nodding. "If you need any help getting around, you can ask. Greenfield is small but easy to get lost in if you're new." Her smile relaxed a little, and Daniel could see the tension leave her eyes. "Thank you. I'm still learning where everything is." They stood there for a moment, not awkward, just surprisingly comfortable for two people who had met only seconds ago. Isla shifted the notebook in her hands, and Daniel noticed small drawings on the cover, delicate sketches of flowers, mountains, and tiny stars. She liked drawing, he guessed, and the thought warmed him somehow. Before he could say anything else, a group of kids called Daniel's name from the riding area. "I guess I should go," he said softly. "Work isn't done yet," Ayla nodded, and for a moment, Daniel thought she'd walk away. But instead, she surprised him by saying, Maybe you could show me around later? If you have time." Daniel felt that soft flutter again, strange but pleasant. He nodded. "Sure, I'd like that." They parted ways then, but the meeting stayed in Daniel's mind the rest of the day. Every time he helped a child climb onto a horse, every time he tied a loose strap or adjusted a saddle, his thoughts drifted back to the shy girl with the pink cheeks and the notebook full of small drawings. That evening, as the sun lowered itself gently over the fields, Daniel found himself walking around the fair again. He wasn't looking for anything specific, at least that's what he told himself. But deep down, he hoped to see her again. And he did. Ayla was standing near a stall selling handcrafted bracelets. She was silently admiring the displays, softly running her fingers over the colorful threads. Daniel approached her slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "Looking for something?" he asked. She turned, and her eyes brightened with recognition. "Oh, Daniel. I didn't expect to see you again today. Guess I wasn't done with the fair after all," he said with an easy smile. They walked together, moving from stall to stall, talking about simple things, where Ayla was from, how different Greenfield felt to her, and what her summer had been like so far. Her voice was gentle, and she spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. Daniel found her presence calming in a way he hadn't felt before. At one point, they stopped near the fence that overlooked the fields on the edge of the fair. The evening had turned golden, painting everything in warm colors. The wind brushed lightly against them, and Isla looked out at the view with wonder. "It's so beautiful here," she whispered. Daniel nodded. He had seen this view 1,000 times, but somehow, seeing it with her made it feel new again. "You picked a good day to explore," he said. They talked for a long time without noticing how much time had passed. Ayla told him that she often felt out of place in crowds and tended to stay quiet. Daniel understood that feeling more than she knew. He wasn't loud either. Most people assumed silence meant disinterest, but he knew silence sometimes carried more meaning than words. "You're easy to talk to," Ayla said quietly. Daniel felt his heartbeat skip slightly, not in an overwhelming way, but in a gentle, honest way. "I could say the same to you," he replied. As the sky grew darker and the fair lights began to glow softly, Isla's relatives called her from afar. She turned toward the voice, then looked back at Daniel. "I should go," she said softly. "Sure," Daniel replied. "If you ever want to see more of the town, just let me know. I'd be happy to show you around." Ayla hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." She walked away slowly, looking over her shoulder once before disappearing into the crowd. Daniel watched her go, feeling something warm and unfamiliar settle in his chest. He didn't quite understand what this feeling was: hope, excitement, curiosity, maybe all three. But one thing was certain. In one short afternoon, Ayla had brought a gentle new light into his quiet life. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was soft, steady, and real, something that made him feel like the world had shifted just a little bit in a good way. That night, as Daniel walked back to his ranch under the starry sky, he thought about her again, the way she smiled shyly, the way her voice softened when she spoke, the way she looked at the fields with wonder. He didn't know what the coming days would bring, but he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: excitement for tomorrow. And somewhere inside, he hoped Ayla felt the same. Alia woke up the next morning with the memory of her meeting with Daniel still fresh in her mind. It wasn't a big or dramatic moment, but something about him had stayed with her. His gentle voice, his calm way of talking, and the kindness in his eyes. She didn't usually trust people easily, but with him, she had felt safe in a way she couldn't fully explain. Daniel, on the other hand, had started his morning earlier than usual. As he fed the horses and cleaned the barn, he found himself thinking about Ayla, how shy she had looked, how her eyes softened when she spoke, and how she seemed to see beauty in small things. He didn't know why she had affected him so deeply, but he felt grateful that their paths had crossed. Later in the afternoon, after finishing his chores, Daniel decided to pass through the marketplace just in case she was around. He told himself he wasn't looking for her on purpose, but deep down, he knew he was hoping to see her again. He didn't have to wait long. Ayla was there, standing under a large tree with her notebook open, sketching the scenery. The sunlight fell gently on her hair, giving her an almost glowing look. Daniel approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt her focus. "You draw really well," he said softly. Ayla looked up in surprise, then smiled shyly when she recognized him. "Oh, Daniel, I didn't hear you come." "Sorry," he laughed lightly. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you." She closed her notebook carefully. "I was sketching the market. It's different from the city. Everything here feels slower, kinder." "Yeah," Daniel said, leaning gently against the tree trunk. "People take their time around here." For a moment, they simply stood together, enjoying the peaceful afternoon breeze. Ayla glanced around, then asked quietly, "Did you come here for something?" Daniel hesitated, then decided honesty was better than pretending. "I was hoping to run into you." Ayla's cheeks warmed at his words. She looked down at her hands, unable to hide her shy smile. "I'm glad you did." They began walking through the market, side by side, talking about simple things: her love for drawing, his life on the ranch, the places she wanted to see while she was in town. Ayla wasn't usually talkative, but with Daniel, The words came naturally. He listened with patience and interest, never interrupting her or making her feel judged. After some time, Daniel asked, "Would you maybe like to see the horses today? If you're free." Ayla's eyes brightened instantly. "Really? I would love that." They walked together to the ranch, and Ayla looked around with awe as they approached the wide fields, the wooden fences, and the strong, gentle horses grazing lazily under the sun. Daniel introduced her to each horse as if they were old friends, and Ayla listened with growing fascination. "This one is Storm," Daniel said, gently brushing the mane of a tall, brown horse. "He's stubborn but loyal." Ayla slowly reached out and touched the horse's neck, smiling as Storm leaned into her hand. "He's beautiful." "You're good with them," Daniel said, noticing how calmly the horses responded to her. "I've always loved animals," Ayla admitted. "But this is the first time I've been so close to horses." "If you want," Daniel said, "I can teach you how to ride. We can start slow." Ayla looked at him with surprise, then nodded. I'd really like that." Daniel showed her how to place her feet in the stirrups, how to hold the reins lightly, and how to sit with balance. Ayla listened carefully and tried to follow every instruction. She wasn't perfect, but Daniel never laughed at her mistakes. Instead, he guided her patiently, always gentle, always encouraging. "You're doing great," he said as she managed her first few steps on the horse. Ayla felt nervous at first, but knowing Daniel was right beside her made her feel safe. His presence was comforting, steady, something she had rarely felt from anyone. After the riding lesson, they walked along the field together. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with soft oranges and purples. Ayla hugged her notebook close to her chest while Daniel walked with his hands in his pockets. "You know," Ayla began softly, "I don't usually spend time with people this easily. Very one. I would be about in 25. One. Daniel looked at her with curiosity. "Why not? I've always been shy," she admitted. "I keep my distance because it's hard for me to trust people. But with you..." She paused, her cheeks turning warm again. "It feels different." Daniel's expression softened. He didn't speak right away. He understood how much courage it took for her to say that. "I'm glad you feel comfortable," he said gently. "You can relax around me anytime. I won't rush you, and I won't expect anything from you." Ayla looked at him with grateful eyes that said much more than words could. They sat on a wooden fence, watching the horses in the distance as the sky darkened. Ayla swung her legs slightly like a child, feeling free and light. Daniel glanced her way a few times, noticing how peaceful she looked. After a long, comfortable silence, Ayla spoke softly. "Daniel, can I tell you something?" "Of course." Ayla took a slow breath, gathering courage. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You're my first." Daniel blinked, confused for a moment. Ayla saw the question in his eyes and quickly explained, her voice soft but steady. "I mean, you're the first person I've felt truly close to. The first person I can talk to without fear. The first person who listens to me like I matter." Her cheeks flushed deeply with emotion. "You're my first real connection." Daniel felt something warm spread through his chest, something gentle but powerful. He looked at her with a soft, sincere expression. "Ayla," he said slowly, "I'm honored you trust me. And I promise." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You'll always be my only." Ayla lowered her gaze, her heart fluttering at the sincerity of his words. She didn't know how to respond, but she didn't have to. Daniel wasn't asking for anything in return, and that made his promise even more meaningful. They sat together until the sky turned dark, and the stars appeared one by one. The cool breeze brushed past them, but neither moved. There was no rush, no need for many words. The quiet felt just right. Eventually, Ayla stood up slowly. "I should head home. My relatives might be waiting." "I'll walk you," Daniel said gently. They walked side by side along the quiet road, the sound of crickets filling the silence. Ayla's steps were small and careful, while Daniel's were steady. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them was warm, not awkward. When they reached her gate, Isla stopped and turned toward him. "Thank you. For today," Daniel smiled softly. "Thank you for trusting me." Isla hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Ayla." She walked inside, but before closing the door, she looked back once, just like she had at the fair. Daniel watched her with a gentle expression, feeling something inside him settle peacefully. That night, both of them lay awake for a long time, thinking about each other. Ayla felt safe. Daniel felt hopeful, and neither of them knew exactly where this connection would lead, but they both sensed it was the beginning of something meaningful. Something soft and pure. Something that made their quiet lives a little brighter. The days in Greenfield passed quietly, but for Daniel and Isla, each day felt precious. They had grown close in such a natural way that neither of them realized how quickly time was moving. Summer was slowly reaching its end, and the warm evenings were turning cooler. The green fields were beginning to change their shade, and even the air felt different, as if gently reminding them that things would not stay the same forever. Isla tried to enjoy every moment she had left. She spent her mornings sketching and her afternoons walking with Daniel, or learning more about the horses. She had grown confident around the animals and even more confident with Daniel. Her shy nature hadn't disappeared, but around him, it softened. She spoke more freely. She smiled more easily. She laughed quietly at his simple jokes. Daniel noticed every little change, and each one made him feel even closer to her. But as the final week of her stay approached, a silent fear settled inside Ayla's heart. She tried to hide it behind smiles, but the thought of leaving Greenfield and leaving Daniel kept tugging at her. One evening, as they walked along the fence line, Isla said softly, "1 week left." Daniel paused mid-step. He had been trying not to think about it, but hearing Isla say it made the truth heavier. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Time passed faster than I expected." Ayla looked down at her hands. "I don't want it to end." There was a soft tremble in her voice. Daniel didn't reach for her or speak quickly. He simply stood beside her, giving her time to gather her emotions. After a long pause, he said gently, "It doesn't have to end." Isla looked up with hopeful eyes, but that hope was mixed with worry. "But you live here. I live far away. It's not easy." Daniel nodded. "I know, but distance doesn't erase what we have." Ayla wanted to believe him. She truly did. But the fear of being forgotten or replaced began to creep into her thoughts. She had always been quiet, always the type to stay in the background. What if, once she left, Daniel found someone else who lived closer, someone who didn't have to say goodbye? Daniel didn't know she was thinking that. He only knew that the thought of her leaving left a strange emptiness in him that he didn't know how to fix. For the next few days, Isla became quieter than usual. She still met Daniel, still smiled at him, but something in her manner had changed. She seemed distracted, as if her mind was somewhere far away. Daniel sensed it immediately. One afternoon, while Isla was helping brush one of the horses, Daniel watched her carefully. She was moving slowly, her smile faint and forced. "You okay?" he asked gently. Ayla hesitated. "I'm just tired." Daniel didn't push further, but he could feel the distance forming a distance that wasn't caused by miles but by unspoken worry. Later that week, a small misunderstanding added to Ayla's fear. She had come to the ranch earlier than usual and heard voices coming from the barn. Curious, she walked quietly toward the sound. Inside, Daniel's friend Caleb was talking to him. "Look, man," Caleb said in a light, joking tone. "Isla's leaving in a few days. You should find a girl from town. Someone who's staying. Someone who can actually be here." Daniel sighed, leaning against the wall. "Caleb, it's not that simple." "It is," Caleb replied. "Long distance never works. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. Better accept that she's just a summer guest." Isla froze. Her heart sank. She didn't hear Daniel's reply because her mind cut everything off after Caleb's words. She stepped back quietly, afraid they would hear her. Her hands shook slightly as she walked away from the barn, her eyes burning with emotion. She didn't know that right after she left, Daniel had said calmly but firmly, "Isla is not just a summer guest. She's special. And I don't want to replace her." But Isla didn't hear that part. All she carried with her were Caleb's careless words. That evening, when Daniel met her near the field, she seemed distant. She didn't smile like usual, and her voice was flat. Daniel immediately sensed something was wrong. "You look worried," he said gently. "Did something happen?" Ayla shook her head. "No. Just thinking about going home." Daniel felt a sting in his chest. "If you're worried about us, we can talk about it." Isla remained silent for a moment before whispering, Maybe it's better if we don't think too far ahead." Her voice trembled slightly, and Daniel felt his heart tighten. "Why would you say that?" Ayla looked away, her eyes glossy. "Because distance is hard. You have your life here. I'll have mine there. And maybe you should be with someone who's actually here with you." Daniel stepped closer, confused and hurt. "Isla, where is this coming from?" She swallowed hard, unable to tell him about overhearing Caleb. It felt childish, and she didn't want Daniel to think she was weak. "It's just practical," she said softly. Daniel shook his head slowly. "Practical doesn't mean right." Isla didn't respond. She felt trapped between fear and hope, and she didn't know how to handle it. For the next day and a half, Isla avoided meeting Daniel. She stayed indoors, telling her relatives she was tired. She spent long hours staring at her notebook. Her thoughts tangled. Part of her wanted to run to him and tell him everything. Another part was scared he might actually agree with Caleb after all. Daniel felt her absence deeply. He waited near the fields, checked the market, walked past the cafe she liked, and even stopped by the tree where she used to sketch. But she was nowhere. With each passing hour, worry grew heavier. Finally, Daniel couldn't take the silence anymore. He walked to her relative's house and asked if Ayla was home. They invited him inside politely and called her. Ayla came out slowly, surprised but nervous to see him standing there. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. Ayla nodded and followed him outside. They walked to the quiet road near the house, the evening wind cool around them. Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "Ayla, what happened?" "You've been avoiding me." Ayla lowered her eyes. "I thought it would be easier." "For who?" Daniel asked gently. "You or me?" She didn't answer. Daniel took a slow breath. "If someone said something to make you doubt me, you should tell me." Ayla's eyes widened in surprise. She wondered if he somehow knew she heard the conversation. Daniel continued, "I don't know what scared you, but I haven't changed how I feel." Ayla stood silently, her heart pounding. She didn't want to cry, but her emotions were too heavy. Finally, she whispered, I don't want to be someone who comes into your life and then disappears. And I don't want to be replaced by someone from your town." Daniel looked at her with deep sincerity. "Ayla, I don't want anyone else." Her breath caught. "I don't care about distance," he said softly. "I don't care about the challenges. I care about you. And if you're scared, I want to know why, so I can help you feel safe again." Ayla hesitated, then finally said in a trembling voice, "I heard someone say you should find a girl from town because I'm leaving." Daniel sighed, understanding at once. "Caleb talks without thinking. I disagreed with him right after he said that. But you didn't hear that part, did you?" Ayla shook her head silently. Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm and steady. "Ayla, listen to me. You're not temporary. You're not a passing summer moment. You matter to me." Tears gathered in Ayla's eyes, but they were not from sadness, now they came from relief. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I got scared." Daniel smiled softly. "It's okay to be scared. Just don't disappear on me like that again." Ayla let out a shaky breath and nodded. They stood there under the soft evening sky, the misunderstanding finally broken. A calm peace settled between them, stronger than before. Even though distance still waited for them, they knew now that their connection wasn't fragile, it was something they were both willing to fight for. The fear didn't vanish completely, but the trust between them grew even deeper, and with only a few days left before Ayla's departure, their bond became more meaningful than ever. The last few days of Ayla's stay passed with a mixture of warmth and heaviness. After clearing up the misunderstanding between them, Ayla and Daniel felt closer than ever. Their fears softened, replaced by a quiet but strong trust. Yet, the countdown to her departure kept echoing in both of their minds, like the slow ticking of a clock. Neither of them could stop. They tried not to speak much about the day she would leave. Instead, they focused on making every moment count. They walked the familiar roads, visited the marketplace, spent time with the horses, and watched sunsets together. These little moments became memories neither wanted to let go of. On Ayla's second-to-last day in Greenfield, Daniel decided to take her somewhere she had never been. He arrived at her relative's house early in the morning, gently knocking on the door. Ayla came out with her hair tied loosely and her notebook under her arm. "You're early," she said, with a shy smile. "I want to show you something special," Daniel replied. Before you go, they walked together toward the hills beyond the fields, a place Ayla had only seen from afar. The path was peaceful, lined with tall grass and wildflowers dancing in the wind. Ayla breathed in the cool morning air, feeling lighter than she had in days. After a short hike, they reached the top of a hill overlooking the entire valley. From there, Ayla could see the farms, the tree lines, the quiet roads, and the faint outline of the town. The morning sun slowly brightened the sky, painting everything in soft gold. Ayla's eyes widened with awe. "It's beautiful." Daniel watched her instead of the view. "I wanted you to see the whole town from here. It's where I come when I need to think." Ayla opened her notebook and began sketching without a word, her hand moving gently across the paper. Daniel sat beside her, giving her all the time she needed. After a few minutes, she stopped drawing and looked at him. "It feels peaceful here," she said quietly. "It always has," Daniel replied. "But today, it feels even better." Ayla blushed softly and looked down at her notebook. They sat there for a long time, enjoying the silence and the warmth of the sun. Ayla didn't want the moment to end. Daniel didn't either, but time kept moving forward, gently reminding them that tomorrow would bring change. Later that afternoon, they returned to the ranch. Ayla asked if she could ride Storm one last time. Daniel smiled and helped her onto the horse, with the same gentle care he always showed. She rode confidently now, a quiet reminder of how much she had learned and how much she had grown with Daniel by her side. After she finished riding, they stood by the fence, watching the horses wander calmly through the field. Ayla leaned her head against her arms, and Daniel stood beside her, close but still respectful of her space. "I wish I had found this place sooner," Ayla whispered. "Found you sooner." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. "You found me at the perfect time." Alia lifted her gaze. "Do you really think we can stay connected after I leave?" Daniel turned toward her fully, his eyes sincere. "Ayla, I don't say things lightly. I meant what I told you. You'll always be my only. Distance can make things difficult, but it won't change how I feel." Alia looked at him, her heart full. She didn't say anything for a moment, but tears of emotion gathered in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away before they could fall. "I'm not crying," she said softly, trying to smile. Daniel smiled back. "Even if you were, it's okay." That evening, as they walked back to town, Ayla felt her fear slowly melting away. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew Daniel wasn't going to disappear from her life, and she didn't want to disappear from his. When they reached her gate, she paused, not wanting to say goodbye just yet. "Tomorrow, will you come with me to the station?" she asked. Daniel nodded immediately. "Of course." Ayla smiled softly, whispering, "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." He gave a small nod. "Good night, Ayla. Good night." The next morning came faster than Ayla wanted. She packed her bag slowly, trying not to rush, folding every piece of clothing carefully. She tucked her drawings inside her notebook, each sketch holding a memory: sunsets, markets, horses, and quiet moments with Daniel. Her relatives helped her load her small suitcase into their car. Isla stood by the door, looking around the place she had called home for the summer. She didn't want to leave, yet she knew she had to. Daniel arrived exactly on time, wearing his clean shirt and his slightly worn-out hat. Ayla felt her chest tighten when she saw him. He walked toward her with a calm expression, but she could see a hint of sadness in his eyes. "You ready?" he asked gently. She nodded, though her heart whispered otherwise. The drive to the station was quiet. Isla sat in the back seat, and Daniel sat beside her. Their hands brushed once, then again, and finally Isla gathered the courage to slide her hand into his. Daniel didn't say anything. He simply held her hand firmly, as if silently promising he wouldn't let go until he had to. When they reached the small station, Isla stepped out slowly. The train stood waiting, its doors open. The sight of it made her chest ache. Her relatives gave them a moment alone and stepped away politely. Ayla turned to Daniel. "I don't know how to say goodbye." Daniel took a slow breath. "Then let's not say goodbye." She looked up in confusion. "What do you mean?" "We're not ending anything today," Daniel replied softly. "We're just starting something new. Something different. Maybe harder, but still ours." Alia felt her eyes fill again. This time she didn't wipe the tears away. Daniel gently brushed one tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Isla," he said in a steady voice, "you matter to me. That won't change when this train leaves." Her lips trembled. "And you matter to me too. More than I expected, more than I understand." He smiled softly. "That's enough for now." The train whistle sounded, making Isla flinch slightly. She looked at the open door, then back at Daniel. "I'm scared," she whispered honestly. "I know," Daniel replied. "But I'll be here. And we'll talk every day. And one day, I'll come visit you. Or you'll come back here. We'll make it work." Alia nodded slowly. She believed him, truly believed him. She stepped closer and rested her forehead lightly against his chest. Daniel placed a hand gently on her back. Nothing more. Nothing less. It was a simple gesture, but it held all the emotions they couldn't put into words. After a long, quiet moment, Isla pulled back, her eyes shining with warmth. "Thank you for giving me something real." Daniel smiled softly. "Take care, Ayla. And don't forget. I meant every word I said." "I know," she whispered, "and I'll carry it with me." With a trembling breath, Isla stepped toward the train. Halfway up the steps, she turned around one last time. Daniel stood where she had left him, hands in his pockets, eyes soft and steady like he was holding her heart safely with his. Ayla gave him a shy, emotional smile. Daniel gave a small nod in return. The doors closed gently, and the train began to move. Isla pressed her hand against the window, watching Daniel as long as she could. He grew smaller and smaller until the train turned the corner, and he disappeared from sight. Isla sat down, her chest aching but warm. She opened her notebook and traced the sketch of the hill he had shown her. She whispered quietly, "You'll always be my only two." Back in Greenfield, Daniel stood on the platform long after the train disappeared. The wind was cool, the morning quiet. But for the first time in years, he felt something new: hope. He knew the journey ahead wouldn't be simple. But simple wasn't what he wanted. He wanted something true, something real, and he had found it in the shy girl who whispered the words he would never forget.